Many of you know about the devastating wildfire that ripped through Jasper, not just the national park, but the historic town site. Between 30 to 50% of the town site, those are the last estimates, and they really haven't had a chance to get in to the town site the way that they wanted to. Although, after the stream here today, there is a press conference with the premier from Hinton. They have a command center just up the road outside of the national park at Hinton, where she'll be holding a live press conference and media scrum. I think it's 12:30 Mountain Time. But let's before we move into yeah, we're just showing some of this. And if you've been to Jasper, and I was there relatively recently, this is just gut wrenching. Many of us in Alberta, but I think around the world, know just how beautiful it is in Jasper, and that it's been a part of your family to go there, especially if you're in like the northern part of Alberta. Calgary visits Banff, we visit Jasper, and was it it's been there for 100 years, and some of the same buildings, and it's horrifying to know that half the town is potentially gone. I know the gas station at the end of town there exploded, from what I understand, because of the fires. Just so we understand just the sheer devastation here, besides showing this clip, and this clip, if you've seen this one, the man stops at one point and says, "That's mom and dad's house." When I think it's this one, and it's gone, like so much of the town. But there's that clip of the premier. It's 5 minutes long. We're not going to show it all, but it's in the CBC article I put in the Slack chat, Olivia. And it's our premier addressing people after finding out that the town had been up to 50% of the town had been lost. So I think she articulates what this means to many Albertans better than most of us can.
Good morning, everyone. In the last day or so, we have all seen on the news and social media the horrific pictures and videos coming out of Jasper. Homes and businesses have been lost to a wildfire that people are calling a wall of flames. There is no denying that this is the worst nightmare for any community. To the residents of Jasper and those displaced far from home looking at the images of your town on TV and online, the feelings of loss and fear and loneliness must be overwhelming. But you are not alone. All Albertans are with you. For many generations, the town of Jasper and the parks surrounding it have been a source of pride. With some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. Our grandparents visited to experience the majesty of this place with its mountains and lakes and meadows. They took our parents, who then took us to this special spot that they'd spent time in as children. And now we take our own kids and our own loved ones and visitors from around the world to feel that same feeling that you get with your first glimpse of the mountains on the horizon. A feeling that even though you've just left home, you're coming home. And so although those of us who experience Jasper as visitors can't imagine what it feels like to be a Jasperite right now, we share the sense of loss with all of those who live in the town, who care for it, and who have helped build it. Jasper, we will continue to stand by you, and as everyone works to get their feet back under them, and as we look forward to recovering.
Yeah, I think that's
right now,
good.
the wildfire is.
So I think that's good. I think she perfectly encapsulates what it feels like to see those pictures. Um, and my my premier is emotional here because I think this, and I'm just reading into her mind, and I don't really have any special knowledge of this except um, a long history of being a political watcher in this province. And I think it's emotional for her because she has personally been through this, not with a fire, but with a flood. In 2013, the rivers in southern Alberta flooded. It flooded Calgary, but it also flooded High River. The and the ghouls on the left did the same thing then that they're doing now, blamed climate change, even though you can pick up by the name of the town, High River, that the river floods. It's on a flood. They built a town on a floodplain. What are you going to expect? Danielle Smith was the Wild Rose MLA there. And so the town was evacuated. I don't even really know the condition of her own home at the time, but people were scared. And she used her position as MLA to get back into the town and go door to door rescuing pets that were left behind, pets that weren't home when people had to evacuate at a moment's notice. And that's what she did for days. And then when people were allowed back into the town, and the town was absolutely just devastated, uh, she cleaned out people's basements. Her and Stephen Harper's wife, actually, they went door to door in their rubber boots, helping rebuild that town. So I think this might bring back some really tough memories for her of what it's like to be in charge of a town that is just destroyed. And, she was the Wild Rose opposition MLA in High River, so she wasn't in charge. But you're the representative of those people. And now she's the representative of all Albertans. And I think this hits pretty close to home for her, as it does for a lot of us. Now, how did we get here, you wonder? Well, if you got all your news from uh, climate change hysterics and Liberal Party enablers on X and social media, well, this would definitely be climate change. But let's see what Tim Moen has to say. Now, Tim Moen, um, prominent libertarian politician here in Alberta, he's also a firefighter. So he's got some expertise in this. So let's see what Tim Moen had to say on X. He said, "Sad day for Jasper. Unfortunately, this was inevitable." And locals have been saying this for years. "Fuel loads had been allowed to grow to ungodly levels in the park. I talked to a park officer about this 15 years ago. He pointed out that aggressive firefighting is partially to blame." It's true. "Every naturally occurring fire is immediately extinguished, which means the forest is never thinned out of old growth and detritus. I asked why nothing is done about it. He explained that nobody wants to be the one to let wildfires burn or disturb pristine nature with heavy equipment to cut fire lines or remove old growth trees. Me. So you're just going to let the risk grow until the town burns? Him? Shrug. Fair enough. He doesn't own the park. If he owned the park, he'd have protected his assets instead of shrugging. This is a problem with public government ownership. Everyone in the system can just shrug." Let's go to Marty up north. Marty lives, if I recall correctly, just west of the park. And we showed this. We showed Marty's his video earlier. But let's go to this other tweet about Stephen Guilbeault. Stephen Guilbeault, for those of you who don't know, climate change hysteric, Minister of Environment and Climate Change Canada, also the in charge of Parks Canada. For those of you who don't know, the national park is not the purview of the provincial government. Uh, Wildfire fighting is the federal government's problem. Now, that is not to say that our provincial wildfire firefighters stopped at the park border. That's definitely not the case. But the proper forest management that we attempt to do on the outside of the park as Albertans is clearly not been happening in the park. Um, One tweet, do you see this one? It's the third one down. Stephen Guilbeault, oh, this my friend Lise Merle. Stephen Guilbeault is the Minister of Parks Canada and needs to have his feet held to the Jasper fire for gross incompetence instead of forest management, firefighting equipment, or wildfire mitigation initiatives like this is what's given priority this year, and they were marking pride. I don't know if you've been to a national park lately. I live right next door to one. I live next door to Elk Island, and so thus I have a parks pass. I actually use it as a shortcut because there's a road that runs right through it. But every year they change all the logos to rainbow, and often I think, is this the best way to spend my national park fees every year? When I'm picking up garbage inside the park when I use the trails, and I've seen, for example, Marty. He has said that the fuel load from pine beetle uh, standing deadfall has not been cleared. People, as Tim said, uh, they just aren't dealing with it. And, Parks Canada wants to keep everything natural. Well, then I guess you're going to have to deal with some very natural forest fires occurring as the forest rejuvenates itself. Unfortunately, though, it claimed the town and people's property and their homes. As my friend Lee says, heads should roll. I'm not sure they will. And you see the federal government and their enablers trying to pin this squarely on Premier Danielle Smith. They're saying that she cut the wildfire budget, that she doesn't take climate change seriously. Uh, the feds have been in charge. The Liberals have been in charge for 9 years. We've been paying a carbon tax for, I don't know, since 2018, I guess it is. They reliably informed me that if I paid more money to the climate gods, that extreme weather and these sort of floods and fires would stop, right? Like that's what they said. They said that. They know that that's not true. They know that this is a naturally occurring thing in the forest. The problem is, if people are going to live in the forest, you have to manage it. Logging stops forest fires. Why? Because it pulls out the old growth and replants the new stuff. So instead of a fire blazing through the forest across the canopy, it slows down when it hits the new growth. And then people can catch up to it and deal with it. That didn't happen in the park. And so now people in Jasper have lost their homes. And it's tragic. But the federal government needs to look at itself here. Now, a journalist yesterday, and I'm very sad to say, and I got out my Western Standard coffee cup for this because I don't want to attack Western Standard here. I think they do good journalism. But let this be a lesson for journalists. Do not craft your questions based on online outrage. If you see somebody saying, for example, that the premier has cut the wildfire budget, go to the budget documents, which are posted online, and check that information before you ask the premier about it. A young journalist from the Western Standard did not do that yesterday. And, well, I'll just show you what happened.
Hello, Premier Smith. Thank you for taking my question. So your government over the last few years has made various cuts to Alberta's wildfire fighting budget. Do you regret making those cuts now? Why or why not?
Well, look, I mean, my first firefighting season was last year, And what we did in response to that was we increased the firefighting budget by 50%. In 2023-4, it was $100.4 million. In 24-25, we increased it to 155.4 million, and that's the highest it's ever been. And there's a reason for that. Is that we knew that we needed to get some of the equipment and change some of the practices, as Minister Lowen had mentioned. We declared the start of forest fire season early. We had all of our personnel hired and in place by April 15th, which is May 15th. By May 15th. And in addition to that, because of the amount of damage that we saw last year, when I first came in, we had $1 billion contingency. My first budget, we increased that to a $1.5 billion contingency. And this budget, we increased to a $2 billion contingency. So there is no limit to the amount of money that we will spend to make sure that we have the resources that we need and to make sure that we have the money available to assist with the recovery. So I would say that we've looked at the lessons of the past, and we made the appropriate amount of investment in this budget year.
That's going to hurt. That is unfortunately somebody who went without checking the facts. And what I do know about Premier Danielle Smith is she comes with the facts. And she has been paying acute attention to what's going on with the wildfires here in Alberta, because the left uses it to say, oh, you look at you and your petrodollars and your fossil fuel industry, you're burning down. It's the earth attacking you, just superstitious nonsense. They tell me it's not a religion, but that sure sounds like an angry pseudo god attacking us for our climate sins, doesn't it? So, she was attacked last year for the forest fires in Alberta, and she said, like, look, the majority of these are human caused. So you are blaming climate change and you're blaming Albertans for providing cheap, reliable energy for the rest of the country, but you cannot blame climate change for arson. Imagine being an arsonist going into court and you're like, actually, it wasn't me. CBC said it was climate change. So you're going to have to let me go. So, I like to show that clip because it is a good learning lesson. Have your facts straight, no matter what politician you're talking to. Bring your facts because they might have some too, and just be ready. And unfortunately, the young man from the Western Standard didn't quite have his facts in his hand when he asked that question. But it is true. Premier Smith raised the forest fire fighting budget by 50%, and it's the highest it has ever been. Now, on the flip side, what I do know is from 2016, the year that Fort McMurray burned, Rachel Notley, the NDP premier at the time, did indeed cut the wildfire budget, and it caused chaos in the water bomber contracts, and a lot of those contracts had to be rewritten, and a lot of those bomber companies just said, we're not, like, forget it. We're not on contract with Alberta now. You've got lease payments on your planes to make, right? And they have to be working. And it was in such disarray because of the cuts to the budget, which caused the contracts to be rewritten. Many of them just took jobs somewhere else, and they weren't available to help Alberta in time when we needed it for Fort McMurray. We're sort of scrambling last minute, and sounds like Danielle Smith, as she said, learned the lessons of the past.